Good morning, everyone. I call the State and Local Government Finance Policy meeting to order on this March 28th, 2023. Thank you all for being here. It's a big day. We're excited to see you here. With that, we have a quorum. There is a quorum present. We have two sets of minutes to be approved. Representative Hewitt, have you had an opportunity to review the March 23 minutes?
I have, and so moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any discussion to the March 23 minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Next, we have the March 24th minutes. Representative Hewitt,
So moved, Madam Chair.
any discussion to the March 24th minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion prevails and the minutes are approved. Okay, with that, okay. We are going to start with my bill, so I will ask Representative Hewitt to take over, if you would, please.
Chair Klevorn, we have House File 1830 back before our committee for consideration. Could you please move your bill?
Thank you. I will move the House File 1830. Let's see.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn, and I see you. Oops. Oh, where would you like to send this, Madam Chair?
It will go to Ways and Means after this committee. So I move it to Ways and Means.
It will be moved to Ways and Means. We have an amendment. DE, can you explain the amendment, Chair?
Thank you. Actually, what we're going to do this morning is we will have a presentation by nonpartisan staff to please walk us through the bill. This is the state government appropriation bill. And with that, I would ask that we move to nonpartisan staff to walk through the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to nonpartisan staff, who wants to start? Mr. Roberts, if you could state your name for the record and go forward.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Helen Roberts from the House Fiscal Staff, and I'm going to walk through the spreadsheet first. You have two spreadsheets in your packet. One is the more detailed spreadsheet that starts with a general fund summary and then detail going into how the appropriations are put together. I'm not going to walk through that, but I do want to make sure everyone knows that I'm available for any member or group of members to walk through the more detailed information after committee. So what I am going to do is start with what's called the change item spreadsheet. And again, just in interest of time, since I don't think you want to just listen to me read a list of things, I'm going to sort of summarize things. So to begin with, and again, starting with the change item spreadsheet, I'll note that the total spending for fiscal year 24 and 25 is 1.565 billion. This is offset by a fiscal year 2023 cancellation of 57.1 million. So that's how this bill meets the target of 1.5 billion, which is 400 million over the forecast base. And then I'll also note that the fiscal year 26-27 spending is 1.29 billion, which is 200 million over the base. Another thing to note is all the maintain current service level change items for the agencies have been funded. So I'll start with the legislature, and you'll see that the increase is $74.1 million. I'll just note, again, not going line item by line item, but there is a significant change in the LCC, and that is due to the revisor system request and also IT upgrades including the television services for the entire legislature. Also funded is the chair's Legislative Task Force on Aging, LCC translation services, and then the IIJA Advisory Task Force. For the governor, there's a change of $11.2 million, and you'll also note under that a reduction of $8.7 million. So this is where the governor's office is transitioning from moving to where they bill out to agencies for a portion of their costs for their government relations staff, and instead have that directly funded in the governor's office appropriation. For the state auditor, there's an increase of $5.8 million, and you can see the different change items listed there. And again, if any member has a question, please feel free to stop me if I go too quickly. Moving on to the second page for the Attorney General, or I might be on a different page than you, but moving on to the Attorney General, the increase is $37.8 million, and that includes some one-time spending of $9.9 million, and then $2.5 million for the enhanced antitrust. Move to the Secretary of State's office, the increase is $2.3 million. Moving on to the CAP board, there is $1 million in fiscal year 23. This is for the updated capital mall design framework plan that we heard the bill on, I think, last week, and then an $850,000 increase for 24 and 25. And that does include one-time funding for commemorative works for the Capitol grounds. For the Office of the Administrative Hearings, there is a $2.37 million increase for the biennium. This includes $1.8 million in one-time funding for the public comment portal. And then you'll see also that the majority of the funding for the for this office is from the Workers' Compensation Fund, so there are increases there also. Moving down into minute services, $140.8 million increase. Largely, much of this is one-time funding. It includes the cybersecurity advancements, the enterprise cloud transformation, targeted application modernization, and then I'll point out that there is funding for Representative Freiberg's Public Land Survey STEM monuments. Next, I'm going to move on to the Department of Administration. You can see this is a long list of items, $72.5 million increase for the biennium. This includes change items related to some of the larger ones are the space consolidation and relocation. That's $20 million, a one-time. The risk management fund, property self-insurance of $12.5 million. Several change items related to grants management, including increasing oversight, equity, the roadmap, and then oversight systems. And then there's some additional funding for all of the public broadcasting, including public TV, AMPERS, and NPR funding. And then again, you'll see there's $5 million, the last item, for the updated Capitol Mall design framework plan. Moving on to Minnesota Management and Budget, the total increase is $45 million. This includes $22 million for the Enterprise Resource Planning Systems funding. So that's for all of the enterprise technology systems. There's funding for a statewide internal audit office, an accountability and performance team, and then some other change items, including Representative Ryer's bill that dealt with employees with disabilities, hiring, and retention. Under the MMB non-operating, two things that I'll note for you. Under fiscal year 23, you'll see there's that a cancellation of $58.3 million from the COVID-19 management account. So that's a reduction in 23 that counts against this committee's target. And then the other negative item you'll see is then the adjustment to agency budgets related to the change in the governor's office, where agencies will no longer be paying for some of the governor's staff. The Department of Revenue, you'll see there one change item for $41.6 million is the maintain current service levels. Gambling Control Board, this change is from the Special Revenue Fund, and then for the Racing Commission, a one-time $1 million general fund change for the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. The commission itself is funded through the Special Revenue Fund, so this is a one-time general fund change. Now we're moving into some of the smaller agencies, and most of the changes here are the maintain current service levels, so I won't touch on those. I'll try to point out a few different changes. Under the Amateur Sports Commission, for example, you'll see that the $850,000 for Representative Newton's ice arena roof upgrade is included. Some other changes would be, for example, under the Indian Affairs Council, you'll see that there's some additional funding for a legislative and policy director, and then for implementing the Private Cemeteries Act. Again, the rest of these are mostly maintain current service levels. There is some funding under the Minnesota State Arts Board, line 186, for increasing grants oversight capacity. Moving to the Minnesota Humanities Center, here's two change items are increasing the funding for the Healthy Eating Here at Home, also known as the Markets Buck program, and then some funding, $5 million for civility and cultural awareness programs and grants. For the occupational licensing boards, it's largely the maintain current service levels operating adjustment. So that brings us down to the end of the spreadsheet. There's some funding for the Campaign Finance Board for $1.6 million for cybersecurity and MinGeo coding and cloud integration. $1 million to the Minnesota Board of Regents for the cut wall study. That's the bill we heard last week related to the falls in Minneapolis. And then $750,000 for the Science Museum of Minnesota for revenue recovery. And then at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see there are some revenue changes. One is under administration, the parking fund debt service waiver. I'll point that one out. And then I'm just trying to reconcile where I'm at. At the very bottom, you'll see the general fund reconciliation of, oh, I'm sorry. I want to know, I'm missing this on this spreadsheet. I was looking for it. On line 263, you'll see a $7 million number, and I'm missing what that is, and that is the transfer to what we call the Facilities Repair and Replacement account. It's an account in administration that is used for asset preservation for various buildings. So that's some additional funding for that account, and I will fix that. Again, moving back to the end of the spreadsheet, you'll see at the end, you can see the general fund base on line 275 is 1.1 million. There are changes in expenditures of 449 million. So that's a $1.6 billion spending. Then this is offset by the revenues and transfers, and then again, the 57.138 million in fiscal year 23 changes. So that final net general fund spending for fiscal year 20, again, my years are wrong in here. I will switch those to 23 through 25 is $1.5 billion.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Mr. Gearing?
Mr. Chair, I'll walk through the policy article of the DE1 amendment. So Ms. Roberts has walked through the spreadsheet, and the spending items reflected in the spreadsheet are reflected in Article 1 of the DE1 amendment. So my walkthrough will primarily orient you to Article 2 of the DE1, and that starts on page 22. There is also, in addition to the actual DE1 in your packet, there's not our traditional section-by-section House Research summary, but there's sort of a table summary that gives a high-level overview of the policy topics that are included within this article and the sections where you can find those. So we'll start on page 22 of the DE1. The first set of sections 1 through 5, reflect Representative Freiberg's House File 274. This is the bill that would establish the State Emblems Redesign Commission to redesign the official state flag and the official state seal. Those changes would be effective May 11th of 2024. Moving ahead to section 6 on page 23, there's a couple of sections here that relate to budgeting at the legislature. I would highlight section 7, which is provides a statutory appropriation for legislative operational funding for both the House, for the House, the Senate, and the Legislative Coordinating Commission. On page 26, starting with section 8, and Section 8 running through Section 13 are provisions that come out of the Legislative Audit Commission, the recommendations of the Audit Commission related to the work of the Legislative Auditor. This is Representative Hansen bill, House File 2770. Then moving ahead to page 29 is the next policy topic. Section 14 is the first of a series of sections that comes from the governor's policy recommendations. There's a number of sections in this article that repeal references to the Office of Strategic and Long-Range Planning, and this is the first section that does that. Sections 15 and 16 are conforming changes that reflect the transition of the legislature to a statutory appropriation format, so it eliminates the requirement that legislative budgets be considered by agencies in the same way as we. Sections 15 and 16 reflect, again, legislative budgeting process to reflect the transition to the statutory appropriation format. Starting in Section 17 through 20, transition the existing Compensation Council, which currently makes recommendations for salaries of the constitutional officers and judges, and instead would provide authority for the Compensation Council to actually establish salaries for those officers rather than recommending them to the legislature. Those changes run from Section 17 through 20. On page 31, Section 21 is another section from the governor's policy recommendations. There's an appropriation in Article 1 related to this. This is the establishment of duties at MMB related to accountability and performance management. Section 22 is a first section. There'll be a set of sections coming up in just a bit related to grants oversight at the Department of Administration. This is a first section that includes a cross-reference related to those new changes. Section 23 and 24 is a governor's recommendation related to the way that MMB bills state agencies for shared services like the SWIFT accounting system and other enterprise systems that are used across agencies. Section 25 relates to the legislative budgeting process, prohibiting the Commissioner of Management and Budget from reducing legislative appropriations through an unallotment process. Section 26 is the statutory language that adopts or that enacts the Office of Enterprise Translations within the executive branch. There's an appropriation in Article 1 to reflect this change. And then starting on page 33, Section 27 running through Section 36 is the series of sections I mentioned that provide additional grants oversight and within the Department of Administration. Sections run through Section 36 on page 38. Just a couple of things to highlight within these sections. One is an authority for the Commissioner of Administration to approve grants effective April 1st of 2024. There's language in here related to administrative costs that agencies may retain for grants and a number of other changes related to the way that grants are administered by state agencies. Section 37 on page 38 of the DE amendment provides a statutory authority for MMB to provide cash flow assistance to Minnesota IT services. Section 38 and 39 on page 39 of the DE expands the permissible use of the ITA account, or also called the Odyssey account, within Minute. Section 40 on page 39 gives authority to Minute to provide grants to counties and other local governments for cybersecurity, and there's an appropriation in Article 1 to fund those grants. Section 41 on page 40 is another conforming change eliminating a reference to the Office of Strategic and Long-Range Planning. Sections 42 and 43 on page 41 expand the permissible uses of the Healthy Eating Here at Home program to include additional types of farmers markets that exist in the state. Section 44 on page 42 is another reference to strategic and long-range planning that's being repealed. Section 45 at the bottom of page 42 is a long section that provides a number of amendments to the Private Cemeteries Act. This is a section that establishes requirements for how cemeteries are identified, treated, and human remains are treated and handled when they're discovered. Moving ahead to page 49, section 46 and 47 come from Representative Freiberg's bill that establishes a public land survey monument grant program. Section 48 on page 50 is conforming language that goes along with the legislative audit provisions that I discussed earlier. Section 49 on page 50 is the actual establishment of the State Emblems Redesign Commission from Representative Freiberg's bill. Section 50 on page 51 is Representative Klevorn's Legislative Task Force on Aging. And then moving ahead to page 53, Section 51 is Representative Cagle's Infrastructure Resilience Advisory Task Force. And then the next section is on page 57. Section 52 requires the Commissioner of Administration to conduct a feasibility study related to the viability of implementing a grants management system enterprise-wide within the executive branch. Sections 53 and 54 are related to the CAP board. This is the bill that the committee heard last week. Section 53 has to do with the redevelopment of the Ford building site, and Section 54 is the capital mall design framework. Section 55 is a conforming change to reflect the transition of the legislature to the statutory appropriation model beginning in fiscal years 2026 and 2027. Section 56 on page 58 requires the Commissioner of Administration to conduct a study related to the needs of small agencies in state government. And then lastly, on page 59 are two repealers. One repealer relates to the State Emblems Redesign Commission, and the second repealer is repealing a requirement that there be a polling place located at the Evergreen Township Fire Hall. And Mr. Chair, that is the end of the walkthrough.
Thank you, Mr. Gearing. Ms. Griffin?
Mr. Chair and members, there's nothing additional that I have to add for the walkthrough.
So we have a little business to do here before we move forward. Chair Klevorn wishes to move her amendment to the DE. Any discussion to that? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment is adopted. Now, on to testifiers. First on deck is Auditor Blah, and second will be the Attorney General's Office, Laura Sales. Auditor, please state your name and title for the record and continue with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Hewitt. Thank you, Chair Klevorn, Lead Nash, and members of the committee. I'm Julie Blaha, your state auditor. First off, a big thank you for the chance to come here and thank you. Your support of the funding proposals that we put forward will make a big difference in our office, and I truly, truly, truly appreciate that. Also, though, you'll see two changes. I think the easiest way to understand them is on line 315, is to read it that way, because that kind of shows it how it is there. From what we said before, one addition is a CTAS upgrade and a compliance dashboard. Now, these proposals were based on some of the one-on-one conversations we've had with all of you, feedback from local officials on our recent State of Mainstream listening tour, and just things from several years of goals here. First off, our popular small cities and towns accounting system, CTAS, needs underlying code updates and further encryption of sensitive data. Now, the Office of the State Auditor creates, distributes, and supports the CTAS system. It helps local entities maintain accounting records, assists in bookkeeping, and facilitates submission of financial records to our office. It's basically QuickBooks for small governments. Entities that use our system on average are more likely to report required data to us on time and accurately, which is one indicator of fiscal effectiveness. And we are currently serving 288 cities, 1,144 towns, 11 special districts. I have the list if you'd like to see if your community is here. And so our goal is to expand the number of CTAS users. Now, users appreciated our last upgrade and have had several requests for further improvements for ease of use and increased security. We believe an update grade will attract more users. Now, after that upgrade, we'll use any remaining funds to reduce the cost of the program to encourage more small cities and towns to use the software. Now, it's only a one-time fee of $300, but when you drop that price down, you can give people that final push to give it a try. The second item, the regulatory compliance and oversight dashboard item, is in a response to calls to support better compliance with funding requirements and other rules from several corners. It's come up in committee hearings, individual conversations. So building a compliance dashboard, like we've seen in some other states, can make it easier for local officials and other Minnesotans to view their compliance requirements, monitor their progress toward full compliance, and find assistance to fulfill those requirements. The easier it is to track compliance, the more likely entities will be effective in meeting the requirements. For instance, it'd be great to be able to go to one place and say, hey, here's where we are in our TIF district. Here's where we are with our audit. Here's where we are with an agreed upon procedures. And you could see in one place if you are there, and the public can see it as well. So overall, this budget presented here would bring us just under what OSA funding was in real dollars and inflation-adjusted dollars at the beginning of the century. And even with a chunk of one-time money, this is a significant recovery and will go a long way to serving Minnesotans in the way that they deserve. Thank you, and I will be here whatever day you do questions.
We'll hang around.
Thank you, Auditor
You betcha.
Blaha.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have Ms. Sales come up, and then on deck is Commissioner Robert Davis.
Hi, thank you. Chair Klevorn, Representative Hewitt, Representative Nash and members. My name is Laura Sales, and I'm the Legislative Director for the Attorney General's Office. Attorney General Ellison wishes he could be here today, but he is presenting the opening statements in the Jewel trial. So he asked me to pass along his thanks for including the Attorney General's fiscal year 24-25 budget requests in the omnibus state government finance bill. On behalf of all the hardworking public servants at the Minnesota Attorney General's Office and the people of Minnesota, we thank you for the support of the unique and vital work the Attorney General's Office does for Minnesotans everywhere. As A.G. Ellison has testified to your committee before, there has been a dramatic lack of investment in the Office of the Minnesota Attorney General over the last 3 decades, a lack of investment that is reflected in our staffing levels and ability to do the work needed to help Minnesotans afford their lives and live with safety and dignity. Part of A.G. Ellison's work since he first took office in 2019 and again in 2023 has been to rebuild the largest statewide public law office in Minnesota. Few law offices in Minnesota handle the range and complexity of civil litigation as the AG's office. Our clients include more than 100 state agencies, boards, and commissions, as well as the people of Minnesota. We handle more than 7,000 legal files per year, and every year the AGO is a net contributor to the general fund. Our work helps Minnesotans across the state. Funding these budget requests will help the Attorney General's Office retain an expert workforce and is probably one of the most important things we can do so that our office can meet the needs of Minnesotans. Our attorneys earn less than public attorneys for local metro counties and almost a third less than attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office. This gap in earnings can make it challenging for us to retain our public interest-minded attorneys. Our operating adjustment will also allow us to further support the backbone of the office. The capacity of the administrative, non-legal side of the office has been chronically understaffed. While employees of the office are very resourceful and continue to serve their colleagues well, the capacity of critical internal administrative functions like human resources, information technology, and finance are stretched beyond their limits. There is a lot to do to keep the office running, and we need enough people to do the work that needs to get done. Lastly, I'd like to reiterate an important point that A.G. Ellison has made to you before, namely that the Attorney General's Office is a great value for the state and the people of Minnesota. We bring in far more money than it costs to operate the office. In the last 4 years, the office has returned about $1.5 billion to the state and directly to the people of Minnesota. This includes about $1 billion to residential and small business utility ratepayers and more than $300 million in settlements from opioid companies, with $200 million yet to come. These budget requests will put us where we would have been if the Attorney General's Office fund appropriation had kept pace with inflation for the last 30 years. The dedicated public servants of the Attorney General's Office work hard to bring unique and significant value to Minnesotans in every part of the state, and they stand ready to do more with your support. Thank you for investing in them so their talents can continue to benefit the state. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sales. Commissioner Robert Davis, please, and Commissioner Showalter is on deck.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I am Alice Roberts Davis, Commissioner for the Department of Administration. I'd like to thank you, Chair Klevorn, and you members for including almost all of the governor's recommendations for admin in the omnibus state government budget bill. It is a pleasure to be addressing these great investments in state operations. As you know, the Department of Administration is primarily an enterprise service agency, and we provide core business functions that are the administrative backbone for state agencies. So when admin works, state government works. This funding proposal in House File 1830 will help admin do our best work and be innovative to accommodate agency needs. Specifically, the bill supports our efforts to provide more equitable and transparent services to our partners. It addresses the increased demand for our services, which has been significant, and utilizes our expertise to address current agency needs for building reconfigurations. I would like to highlight the importance of some of these recommendations that were included. House File 1830 addresses admin's rising costs and accommodates the increased demand for our services. Requests for reviews and assistance from other agencies and the public has steadily increased over the last few years, while our staffing levels have remained relatively flat. These funds will also accommodate an important policy update to the Private Cemeteries Act and specifically support the work of the Office of the State Archaeologist. Admin has the expertise to help our state agencies to more effectively use current space. The funding in House File 1830 will provide the state with the resources for agencies to consolidate their office space and focus their operating budgets on their core missions. It will also stabilize the parking fund and protect public parking facilities while agencies work through reconfiguring their offices. Thank you for including additional authority for admin to improve grants administration oversight. These changes in funding will enhance transparency and equity in state grant making, as well as ensure that agencies have the minimal funds necessary to oversee administration of state grants. Access to quality translations under new Office of Enterprise Translations will enable agencies to provide important information to almost all Minnesotans regardless of their native language. And I am most pleased that House File 1830 will allow us to continue our outreach and training for small businesses throughout Minnesota who wish to contract with all levels of state government through our Apex accelerators or Procurement Technical Assistance Center. As you work through the conference committee process, I would also encourage you to consider funding for our IT staff and Office of Enterprise Sustainability requests. I also would like to point out that admin is concerned about the requirement for mixed-use development on the Ford Building site. This requirement will prevent a future project from using general obligation bonds and will force the legislature to pay cash for the redevelopment of that site. And this is a unique year where there is a large surplus, but normally we can only construct new buildings with general obligation funds, or bonds, excuse me. Finally, I'd like to reiterate our true appreciation for the inclusion of so many of the governor's budget recommendations, and these investments in state government will address the increased demand for our services and ensure that those services are more transparent and equitable. I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Showalter, and on deck is Commissioner Marquardt. I feel like I'm coaching T-ball again here. Commissioner, please state your name for the record and continue with your testimony.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Jim Showalter, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak on the importance of the omnibus bill and the elements from Minnesota Management and Budget that are in this bill. No time's limited, so I'll be brief. I can summarize in three general aspects of this bill that are very near and dear to me, to the governor, lieutenant governor, and I hope you as well. The first involves securing and maintaining foundational services and supporting state government. Without reliable funding sources, MMB wouldn't be able to provide even current levels of service for the state's enterprise resource planning, for the ERP systems that all three branches of government use. That's for accounting, human services, financial reporting, and other things. The bill creates sustainable funding sources to secure these systems that serve as the backbone for everything that happens as state government operations. Apart from our ERP systems, which have a structural deficit, the cost of doing business is rising for everyone, including MMB. The omnibus bill provides additional operating funds to recognize those growing costs, which I appreciate. Second area is providing strategic leadership that maximizes investments and resources and fiscal oversight for every part of state government. The bill authorizes additional FTE for core financial management and oversight functions at MMB, including statewide federal funds coordination, budget analysis, banking and payroll services, debt management, and regulatory compliance. And the bill expands MMB's internal controls and accounting team, which establishes a statewide internal control audit office, protecting taxpayer dollars and ensuring state government works as efficiently and effectively as possible. I appreciate the additional resources you're directing to these needs. Third and final area, prioritize people, people-centered and good government solutions. The legislation establishes the enterprise strategy and performance team at MMB to centrally coordinate state strategic planning efforts, cross-agency policy analysis, and planning around the core long-term challenges that face Minnesotans. The language also expands MMB's capacity to provide capital budget, outreach, and assistance, particularly for capital projects owned by nonprofits or political subdivisions that do not already participate in the capital budget process. The omnibus bill provides funds for a cross-agency work group to develop minimal data collection standards for race, ethnicity, gender identity, and disability status, and develop a roadmap and timeline for implementing these data standards. I want to thank the chair for including updates to the Compensation Council. The governor's recommendations varied slightly, and we'd like to continue conversations, but with the chair and the committee, but we know we're closer to aligning with his recommendations. And I also want to just recognize that this process is moving very quickly. And I want to highlight that some aspects of the governor's revised budget recommendations that we may want to work with the chair to include in language in this bill. But overall, as you know, the language of this bill only became available last night, and we're still combing through it, and as we work through the details. So we may have additional comments later, but overall, I want to thank the chair, the committee, for just including so many of the governor and lieutenant governor's recommendations in this bill. So with that, Chair, representatives, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marquardt. And on deck is Deputy Commissioner Etchen.
Eichten.
Thank you, sir. Eichten.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Paul Marquardt, the Commissioner of Revenue. And a big thank you to Madam Chair and members of the committee for funding Governor Walz's request for the Department of Revenue. And this will allow us to continue the excellent service that we provide to our customers throughout the state, and also allow us to maintain the IT capabilities and support that are crucial to the Department of Revenue. And as I mentioned here before, the Department of Revenue, like many agencies, is a big window to state government by our citizens. And so our excellent staff at the Department of Revenue takes that responsibility very seriously, and this will allow us to continue to have an efficient system of enforcement and collection and assessment and administration of our revenue stream that funds our important services. And members, I have to remind all of you, exactly 3 weeks from today, April 18th, is the income tax due date. And as of today, we've received about 1/2 of the 3 million returns, income tax returns that we expect to receive this filing season, and have put out about 900,000 refunds, an average of we process that right now at an average of about 8 days. So this funding is very important to keep those staff levels up, to continue to provide those excellent services. So again, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, member of the committee, thank you so much for this budget appropriation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Mr. Eichten, if you could come up, and then on deck, last but not least is, change in the lineup here. Mr. Callagher, you're on deck. No, Mr. Eichten, you're up right now. Okay, this happens in T-ball too. Wrong batter.
Mr. Chair, thank you. This is why I didn't last long in T-ball. For the record, my name is John Eichten, Minnesota IT Services Deputy Commissioner. First, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, committee members, for your recognition of the importance of investing in modern technology as a means of improving Minnesotans' experience when they interact with their state government, of increasing the efficiency of state agency operations, and improving our state's overall cybersecurity posture. Minute is excited to continue to advance a digital government that works for all. The investments included in the committee's budget will provide a tremendous catalyst for advancing this vision and partnership with the legislature, as well as with the Technology Advisory Council, who have been our partners over the past few years in advancing that vision. By funding proposals for targeted application modernization, Minnesota would for the first time take a strategic enterprise approach to addressing the state's longstanding information technology debt. It will also provide an opportunity to advance human-centered services for Minnesotans that can leverage modern technology in ways heretofore never seen in the state of Minnesota, except in a few isolated instances. Minute is grateful for the shared recognition of the importance of reducing cybersecurity risk across the executive branch, as well as the opportunity to support our local government partners via the cybersecurity plan that will be developed to advance the state and local cybersecurity grant program. We look forward to collaboration with the Minnesota Cybersecurity Task Force as that plan is assembled and those dollars are allocated in the most effective way possible to state and local government. Minute is equally pleased to see funding of the enterprise cloud transformation proposal in the governor's budget recommendations. This proposal is crucial for accelerating the transition of the executive branch from on-premise architecture to more resilient cloud-based infrastructure that builds a modern and scalable foundation for the previously mentioned proposals to build upon. Also want to thank you for the inclusion of policy proposals that were advanced this session to modernize Minute's underlying enabling statute and advance recommendations from the Technology Advisory Council related to information telecommunications technology account. While other proposals included in the governor's budget recommendations were structured somewhat differently in the bill before, Minute recognizes the need to develop a fiscally responsible budget for future years, and we look forward to continued partnership in future sessions to identify some sustainable funding paths for these proposals as they move into operations and maintenance modes. Finally, we want to note the inclusion of funding for the perpetuation of public land survey corners. Minute, through the Minnesota Geospatial Information Office, stands ready to support the administration of this program, as noted in House File 1231. In closing, Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for recognizing the risk and the service delivery constraints imposed by aging legacy technology and taking a major step forward this session via this budget package toward addressing these risks and positioning state technology to better meet the expectations of Minnesotans in the digital age. We look forward to continued partnership with the committee, and thank you again for advancing these critical investments.
Thank you, Mr. Eichman. And last but not least, we have one more after this. Oh. Mr. Kelleher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chair Klevorn. I'm David Kelleher, Minnesota Historical Society. Simply want to say thank you for the inclusion of the governor's recommendations for operating adjustment to maintain current levels of service and the initiative for earned income recovery. These two initiatives will help us to fulfill our mission to serve all Minnesotans, to preserve and share history across the state. We will be able to pay our hardworking and dedicated staff and maintain a network of 150 buildings at 26 sites across the state with all of the operational needs that come with a statewide network like that. So again, thank you for your support, and we look forward to working with the chair and the committee as you move forward in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelleher. All right. Ms. Alice. And if you could, please state your name and title for the record and continue with your testimony. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Hewitt, Chair Klevorn, Liz Nash, and members of the committee. My name is Marie Ellis. I'm the Public Policy Director at the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. The Minnesota Council of Nonprofits is a statewide membership organization, and our mission is to inform, connect, promote, and support the nonprofit sector and individual nonprofits across the state. I am here to offer a profuse thank you for including provisions in your bill that would support the state's oversight of its grants to nonprofits. As I've said in this committee before, nonprofits rely on the public's trust to further our missions, and appropriate oversight is critical to that end. I'll note as well that these provisions do have bipartisan support and would provide more centralized support and guidance at the Office of Grants Management, develop, improve, and implement standards and policies for data keeping and analysis, as well as outreach and training. And as well, I think you all know, a roadmap towards including a grants management platform that all of the state agencies would use, which would lead to better transparency and cost efficiencies. I'd love to end my testimony there, but I do have one significant concern, which is I'm looking at the detailed spreadsheet on line 99, the increase in oversight at the Office of Grants Management. And I see that the funds there have been front-loaded to the 24-25 biennium and then zeroed out in the 26-27 biennium. So that's a significant concern because that work is ongoing. It's not a one-time cost. So we ask you to reconsider that to provide ongoing funding in the base for oversight of the state's grants to nonprofits. And we'll continue to work together on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
I appreciate that.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify on the bill? Please come down and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'll be brief. My name is Justin Stofron. I'm the Anti-Monopoly Director with the Minnesota Farmers Union, which is a grassroots organization representing family farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. I'm just here to give our thanks for the funding for the Attorney General's office in this budget. Our members care about this. Our members made limiting corporate control and protecting competition in the marketplace a key priority for our organization this year. This because farmers find themselves on the front lines of our concentration crisis. They face extreme concentration when they go to purchase inputs. They also face extreme concentration when they go to get their goods to market. And yet is the and concentration is not just an issue in agriculture. The Boston Federal Reserve Bank recently found that concentration across the economy has increased by 50% since 2005. And the Economic Security Project estimates that at current rates of consolidation, we'll have precisely one company in the U.S. by 2070. And yet, as the AG's office mentioned earlier, they're operating with less staff than they did just a couple decades ago. And so we really appreciate the increased funding for the office. Also appreciate the $2.5 million that's set aside in FY24 specifically for antitrust and nonprofit oversight. This is a really great opportunity for the legislature to address a wide range of issues, from the loss of family farms and small businesses to declining wages to the high prices that Minnesotans are facing. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for the inclusion of all of this in the budget. Thanks.
Thanks for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on the amendment? Please come up and state your name for the record.
Hi, how are you? Hi, my name's Phil Rains. I'm representing the Minnesota Society of Professional Surveyors. Just wanted to step up and say thank you very much to the author for all the work that's done on this for the public land survey system. It's a vitally important system. We've had about 150 years of deterioration, and this is a great step to start moving us to fix that system and hopefully guarantee all your land rights as they should be. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none. This concludes the public testimony today. Madam Chair, would you like to say anything before we?
I think there are a couple of members of our committee who have a few comments. Did you want to?
So, to our committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Klevorn. Just on the state archaeologist, I'd like to follow up with, because I think there are Amish burials that may not be included or considered, and just to make sure that they're in the language that's covered here, that we're addressing and respecting what's happening there. So I'd be happy to follow up with the archaeologist on that.
Thank you for bringing that to my
Thank you,
attention.
Thank you, Representative Hanson. Anyone else wishing to Representative Nash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the author, can you map out for us what the next couple of days will entail as it relates to this bill, amendment deadlines and so on, just so that all members and members of the largest group we've had in committee, I think, to date, can understand what's going to happen as we move forward?
So I would like to ask Ms. Rudolph to go through the timeline since she does the actual posting, and I didn't bring my notes for that with me to the table. So if I could ask Ms. Rudolph to talk about our timeline for moving this forward.
Ms. Rudolph?
Chair Klevorn, Chair Hewitt, and Representative Nash, on tomorrow, Wednesday at noon, amendments will be due. On Thursday, we will take any additional testimony. We will do markup and passage, and all of this is posted on our webpage.
Thank you, Ms. Rudolph.
Thank you, Ms. Rudolph. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the author. We briefly addressed this last night, but I'm just trying to figure out, are we going to merge this with the policy omnibus in Ways and Means, or is it going to get merged in the floor? Is it going to have two flying independent of each other? Just so that we understand how to properly address amendments that we may or may not have.
Chair Klevorn.
Thank you very much. And as I said last night, Lead Nash, at this moment, the bills are moving separately. And I would encourage you to prepare amendments on the floor as the bills are separate. And just saying, I did have my notes with me for the roadmap, so thank you, Ms. Rudolph. But at present, they are separate bills, and I do not have further guidance for you at this time.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or ask questions? Seeing none, additional testimony will be taking place on Thursday. Markup will also happen, and passage. So until then, thank you, Chair Klevorn.
Thank you very much. I would just be, committee members, I just want you to know the bill is laid over. My budget bill as amended is currently laid over. So with that, we will move on to Representative Bierman. Thank you for being with us this morning, and thank you for your patience in waiting for us. We have House File 402 before us. If you would like to introduce your, so I will move that this bill be re-referred to the Health Committee. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, it's going back to Health. All right, thank you. The bill is now before us. If you would begin your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. House File 402 encompasses three main issues. Number one, the return of charitable assets in certain circumstances. Number two, how the legislature can address the impact of mergers and acquisitions of healthcare entities on public interest and public health. And number three is the issue of health maintenance organization conversions from nonprofit to for-profit. House File 402 recognizes that the U of M is at the center of public health in Minnesota, providing a continuum of care and treatment, research for cures, and health science instruction. The earned position of national renown of this institution and the paramount role the U of M plays in the health of our state should not be diminished in any way. We obtain 70% of our physicians from the U of M. A preponderance of our medical professionals receive training through U of M facilities. Any merger that sweeps up valuable public assets and needed community health resources would be detrimental to the citizens and taxpayers of this state. The second issue of House File 402 addresses the impact of mergers and acquisitions of healthcare entities on our communities. The high costs of healthcare are attributable to many sources. Consolidation is just one of them. The adverse impacts of healthcare consolidation can be felt throughout the United States, in our businesses, our economy, our healthcare premiums, our wages, and in our healthcare decision-making. The repercussions of high cost affect us all. Research from the Millman Institute and many other sources have repeatedly shown that consolidation results in higher prices. Costs for patients tend to rise between 10 and up to 40% with emerging entities. Adjacent medical providers also tend to impose higher prices. Studies also indicate that mergers have resulted in a lower quality of patient experience and frequently lead to local essential services being reduced and even eliminated. House File 402 will set some standards from which to gauge the value of a merger to the local market. The first being, will a merger or acquisition be in the public interest? Meaning, will it improve access, quality health outcomes, while moderating the unsustainable cost increases? These are measurable and desirable outcomes for all our constituents. Members, 29 other states have some level of oversight of medical merger transactions. In Minnesota, relying almost solely on Federal Trade Commission watchdogs or our Attorney General to monitor anti-competitive and charitable asset violation alone will not be enough to provide either insight nor oversight of our medical landscape in the future. The bill before you today will establish a process of notice, review, and approval of mergers organized around our Minnesota Department of Health and the Office of the Attorney General. Presently, mergers and acquisitions are too often viewed as simply a business transaction. Now, I know there is a belief by many that the market cures all ills. I think anyone serving on a Health and Human Services Committee, or the public that is tuned in today, or those of us who have navigated our healthcare system would acknowledge that there are gaps, that our healthcare system needs work, reform, and change. I've spoken to many people on both sides of the aisle who have called our system broken. Bill 402 provides an opportunity to analyze more data, view the market holistically, and make some decisions to pursue a better statewide health infrastructure to improve health access for Minnesotans no matter where you live. The third item in House File 402 is an extension on the existing moratorium on health maintenance organization conversions from nonprofit to for-profit. This bill also provides the resources to the Minnesota Department of Health to study the conversion of nonprofit to for-profit and propose updated guidelines for the legislature to consider next year. Members, the moratorium expires this July 1st, so the time to act is now. Without regulation, conversions across the country have repeatedly resulted in nonprofit health plans changing to for-profit status and turning decades of charitable assets into private profits. Let me share with you a couple examples from other states without regulation. When a nonprofit in Georgia converted to for-profit, the Georgia public received nothing, but executives and employees received $28 million in bonuses. Another case, Mutual of Ohio proposed to sell most of its assets to a for-profit for $300 million. A controversy ensued, and laws were changed, but they were not strong enough. The state retained only $25 million. Executives walked away with $28 million. There was a notable success in California after a couple of undervalued nonprofit conversions got away. California passed strong conversion legislation as another firm was trying to convert. Eventually, this insurer agreed to distribute all its $3.2 billion to foundations that continue to serve the state today. When well regulated, conversions have resulted in turning assets toward community benefits that have transformed the health and well-being of communities for the long term. Members, HMOs were created 50 years ago, driven by a desire for consumer protection. The purpose of nonprofit HMOs has not changed. Nonprofit HMOs are built on beneficial public investments, including lucrative tax breaks and broad public contracts. They provide essential healthcare services to Minnesotans. Think of HMOs as a bargain. We reserve public markets for HMOs, sheltering them from taxes and competition. And the HMO's sole mission is to improve our health with their earned assets. These assets are worth billions, from real estate, infrastructure, branding, goodwill, and a reservoir of reserve funds. To protect these assets for their intended use, we need to extend the moratorium, convene the study, initiate and update the regulatory review process on conversions, and hold hearings in the legislature to discuss the future of these public assets. We still have a very strong nonprofit HMO system here in Minnesota, but the door to for-profit was opened in 2017, and we would be well served by updating the regulations to ensure the system's health in a volatile market of corporate competition. And that, Madam Chair, is the short version of this explanation of the bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Bierman. We have several people listed to testify. If I can move to testifiers.
Please.
Now. We will begin with Brian Baglio. Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn, members of the committee. My name is Ben Baglio, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me to testify today on behalf of the Minnesota Nurses Association, which represents over 22,000 registered nurses working at the bedside in hospitals across Minnesota. MNA is proud to support House File 402 because it provides the Minnesota Attorney General and the Department of Health with the authority and tools desperately needed to protect patients, communities, healthcare workers, and our entire state healthcare delivery system from the harms caused by consolidation and corporatization. We know that nationally, regionally, and right here in Minnesota, corporatization and consolidation leads to vital services being stripped from rural and lower income communities and shuttled to larger facilities further and further away. Consolidation raises prices, lowers accessibility, and is bad for patients and communities. Among other provisions in this bill, nurses support House File 402 because it establishes new safeguards at the state level for preventing harmful mergers and transactions. It outlines a comprehensive and data-informed approach, one that leverages the expertise and existing structures at MDH and the Attorney General's office to get the job done. It would fix glaring holes in our state's antiquated or sometimes non-existent healthcare anti-monopoly laws. It extends the moratorium on HMO conversion and also provides for the state to establish more longer-term solutions. And it would prohibit CEOs and other executives of nonprofit healthcare entities from personally benefiting financially from a merger or healthcare transaction. Opponents of this bill are going to say this isn't needed, existing regulations are already in place, they're quite robust, but that argument falls apart pretty quickly. Because if you can currently become a multimillionaire in the state of Minnesota, running a tax-exempt nonprofit healthcare entity established with a legislatively defined purpose, which is to operate and function as a community benefit, then who are the current rules actually helping? In addition to supporting this bill, I'd also just encourage members of the committee to review the written testimony a little bit more substantive that we submitted for the record, as well as a report titled Healthcare at a Crossroads, which really explores mergers and their impacts on our healthcare system, as well as current mergers that have been proposed. And with that, I'd just like to, again, thank Representative Bierman for his leadership on this, as well as our two co-authors on this committee, and also thank you, members of the committee, Madam Chair, for your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we'll move to Abby Loesch. Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Abby Loesch, and I'm the Health Policy Director for the Minnesota Business Partnership. We are a member organization consisting of business leaders from Minnesota's largest employers, employing almost 500,000 workers across the state. Minnesota ranks near the top in the nation for healthcare coverage, and we are grateful to our many world-class healthcare providers. Healthcare availability, access, and equity are incredibly important to our members, and I want to express some of our concerns regarding House File 402. It is vital for healthcare entities in our state to be able to operate with the flexibility they need to ensure quality access and care is provided without the disruption of the increased oversight guidelines outlined in House File 402. The current oversight and review process we have in place in Minnesota ensures that health entities can make the organizational transactions needed to operate and increase access to the thoughtful care that they provide to patients. Minnesota is experiencing healthcare workforce shortages, and allowing providers and healthcare entities to have the balance and flexibility they need to make decisions to best serve their patients and communities should be the ultimate goal as you work on this legislation. We believe it is of extreme importance that the committee recognize there are circumstances where overregulation of healthcare oversight can impact patient care, and we must realize that the sustainability of our healthcare workforce and our health providers will be impacted by the added oversight outlined in House File 402. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate your being with us this morning. Next, we have Danny Ackert. Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record and begin your testimony, please.
Well, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Danny Ackert. I'm the Director of State Government Relations for the Minnesota Hospital Association. I'm here today to share some of our concerns with House File 402. The AG's office has regularly discussed House File 402 throughout the committee process as merely building off its existing authority to enforce provisions of the Nonprofit Corporation Act. However, the scope of this bill is well beyond that, as it would impose a new and lengthy notice requirement and waiting period on a broad variety of hospital activities that are categorically unrelated to the existing oversight of a hospital's charitable purpose. Therefore, while the meaning of contrary to public interest might be well established in one context of AG enforcement, it has no established meaning in House File 402 other than within the subjective criteria laid out in Section 1, Subdivisions 5 and 6. House File 2 also offers no end date upon which the Attorney General's authority to enjoin or unwind a healthcare transaction terminates. Therefore, it effectively offers all future attorneys general the ability to seek to unwind any transaction at any point in the future if said AG finds that is now contrary to public interest. This is fundamentally different and much more unsettling than the AG's current authority and provides an unprecedented level of uncertainty on how healthcare is to be conducted in Minnesota. This unlimited review timeline is accompanied with a seemingly unlimited and unrestricted rulemaking authority for the Commissioner of Health. House File 402 waives requirements that an agency must publish a notice of rulemaking within 18 months of the effective date of the law. To the best of my knowledge, there are only 4 places in Minnesota statute where this requirement is indefinitely suspended, and as such, in this context, it only furthers the uncertainty and unprecedented change to healthcare in Minnesota. In closing, we strongly urge this committee and the legislature to work with providers and healthcare entities to level set any desired changes to how healthcare is conducted in Minnesota. Form must follow function. We understand and share the desire to protect the public interest and ensure that Minnesotans have the best healthcare possible. We also know, as providers, that in order to fulfill our shared mission to service to our communities, House File 402 throws more out of balance and places more uncertainty on healthcare at a time when imbalance is prevalent and uncertainty is unyielding. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate your being here this morning. And next, we have Aaron Conti. Welcome to the committee. If you'll state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Erin Conti, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come and talk about consolidation in healthcare and the AG's efforts at oversight. Minnesota is fortunate to have excellent healthcare providers, but our state has not been untouched by trends towards consolidation, and those trends have been accelerated by the recent pandemic. Minnesotans are asking the Attorney General to look closely at consolidation, to take steps to safeguard our healthcare institutions. And our existing authority does not allow us to scrutinize transactions in the way they are asking us to do so. So let's take a look briefly at this robust authority that has been called out today. As you know, the Attorney General can review transactions and examine whether they violate existing antitrust provisions within state law. They can also look at transactions to evaluate whether they are in compliance with the state's nonprofit and charitable asset provisions. These are discrete authorities that leave a variety of important transactions beyond the reach of the Attorney General's office. The bill before you would plug the holes in the AG's existing authority, allowing the Attorney General to look at a wider variety of transactions. The bill would also provide more certitude in the process, allowing the potential merging parties to know what they need to provide in terms of supplemental information to the office. And then it would lay out a variety of enforcement provisions that build on the AG's existing authority. Specifically, the Attorney General would be able to go to court to ask for the enjoining, unbinding of transactions when they violated 3 discrete categories. One is when a transaction would have the tendency to monopolize or monopsonize. The second is for nonprofit healthcare entities, if the transaction would result in misuse of nonprofit assets, diversion from their charitable purposes. And then the third is for transactions that are contrary to the public interest. And there are factors guiding that, including that the transaction would harm public health, reduce access to services, the transaction would harm medical education and workforce development, cause harm to the healthcare market, or increase costs. As I said, Minnesotans are asking us to look closely to protect their care, and this bill would build on the AG's piecemeal authority to do so. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate your being here. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to testify on this bill? We have a member coming down. If you'd please state your name for the record and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn and committee members. For the record, my name is Justin Stoufferon with the Minnesota Farmers Union. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House File 402. Our members care about this because mergers raise the cost of health care, as Representative Bierman detailed earlier. In particular, rural Minnesota already has the second most highly concentrated hospital market in the entire country. But unfortunately, several decades of lax enforcement and court interpretations have buried our state and federal antitrust laws under a mountain of bad case law that has made it exceedingly difficult to stop bad mergers. This is particularly true in the case of cross-market healthcare mergers, where 2 systems that do not operate in the same market merge. This is why cross-market systems now account for nearly 70% of health systems, up from 10 to 15% just a couple decades ago. This bill addresses that challenge by providing Minnesota the ability to enforce this bill's provisions that prohibit transactions that do not serve the public interest. This legislation also gives teeth, particularly the rulemaking around the pre-merger notification process in this legislation, which is really important to make sure that agencies have the time and the information necessary to thoroughly investigate and evaluate a transaction. And it's not terribly dissimilar from what federal agencies currently have, where there's a second review period that gives them basically whatever time they need to collect information. And finally, there have been some suggestions that time limits be placed around the authority in this legislation, but that'd be really contrary to the way current state and federal law treats mergers and consolidation in the marketplace. Agencies need flexibility if they're going to protect Minnesotans from monopoly power. Finally, I just want to thank Representative Bierman for his leadership on this issue, as well as the co-authors that are on this committee, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else from the public? You please come forward and begin your testimony, please.
Good morning, members, Madam Chair. Tom Lehman speaking for Prairie Care. I had not planned to testify, but after hearing some of the comments, I felt compelled. Just a bit of background. Prairie Care is one of 2 for-profit hospitals in the state. You may be aware of it because I know that many of you receive calls from constituents expressing concern about their inability to get their children admitted to a psych hospital. And we've all seen the stories in the paper about children being boarded in hospital ERs, parents at their wits' end, not knowing what to do with a child who's suicidal or psychotic, and just facing real challenges. Prairie Care, over the last short number of years, has expanded from 20 beds to 50 beds to 71 beds. They're now finishing an addition that was authorized by the legislature 2 years ago that will bring them up to 101 beds. They're now the largest provider of children's mental health services in the state, with our Brooklyn Park Hospital, as well as outpatient clinics throughout the metro, as well as Rochester and Mankato. I wanted to say that just as background. Last year, Prairie Care was facing some financial challenges to get financing to allow it to keep going. There's a lot of challenges in mental health, as I'm sure you all know. State doesn't pay well, private payers don't pay well, and it's a challenge to keep the doors open. The result of their financial challenges was to be acquired by a company called Newport Health. Newport Health is a for-profit national corporation based in Nashville. They provide only outpatient mental health, CD, and eating disorder services. Here in Minnesota, last year they became aware of Prairie Care because of their involvement in purchasing a number of struggling outpatient mental health facilities, including the St. Cloud Children's Home, which was in such bad financial shape that the Diocese of St. Diocese of St. Cloud said, we can't do it anymore. And I think you recognize you really have to be in bad shape for the Catholic Church to say, we're done, since that's part of the Catholic Church's mission. But they went into St. Cloud and invested around $10 million and turned the St. Cloud Children's Home from an empty facility to one that's serving 100 young people a day with CD and mental health issues. As a result of their presence in Minnesota, Newport found out about Prairie Care. They have no hospitals anywhere else in the country in their 17 states. They acquired Prairie Care, and Prairie Care is the only hospital in that system. But they were excited to learn, excited for the opportunity to learn more about outpatient services and inpatient services for the same population, mental health and CD. I've shared this language with Newport, and they tell me that if this language had been in effect last year, they would not have bought Prairie Care. Prairie Care, good luck to you, but we would not have invested because of the uncertainty from a financial perspective. This 180-day long review period just creates too much uncertainty from a business perspective to start that process not knowing if there's going to be a successful outcome. Normally in a for-profit setting, 2 parties can come together, make a deal, and move on. Under this bill, 2 parties could come together, seek to make a deal, but not really sure if they're going to be allowed to move on. And then even if they do move on and Party A acquires Party B, there's the potential down the road for the Attorney General to come back and say, wait a second, that deal you made in 2023 or 2020 or 2015, we now have concerns.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up so we have time for member questions as well.
Okay, so I'll just conclude by saying there's concerns here. Representative Bierman, who's been very helpful in terms of meeting with me and listening to my concerns, noted that there's 29 other states that have this kind of thing. In none of those states are for-profit hospitals included. Minnesota would be the first state in the country to include a for-profit business having exposure to these restrictions and these oversights. And I look forward to continuing to talk with him and see if we can make progress on that front.
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Lehman.
members.
It's great to have you with us. Okay, seeing no one else from the public wishing to testify, we'll move to member questions. Do you want to go last, or would you like to go?
How much time do we have?
Well, we end at 10 o'clock, so, and we're going to move the bill. So,
I think Representative Koznick had something, and then I'd like to.
okay, we have Representative Hewitt, Representative Bonner, and Representative Koznick, and so,
Real,
please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And real quick, and I don't know if this will be real quick because I'm really complexed with this issue. Hearing what the AG just said, that the tools aren't there. This is my space. This is where I came to the legislator from, is a nonprofit medical company that owns helicopters. Very, very valuable assets are bought in the nonprofit space. And this concerns me greatly. How do you transfer those assets to now for a profit? I was part of a company that was a parent company to the U of M when it switched over to Fairview, and a lot of state assets, a lot of assets that the people in the state of Minnesota owned went with that. I have big concerns about this. I mean, I get it that we got to provide care for our people. The same thing, everybody in this room grew up with HMOs. Group health was the first one. We assisted them as a state with a lot of benefits, a lot of tax breaks, a lot of freebies to get that patient base they have today. That patient base is their value. What does that mean in this whole thing? And like I said, I'm real concerned because I don't think the AG has the guardrails in place or the tools they need, as she testified today, to get to where we need to go with this, because this is really about protecting what we have, making sure that the patients are not better. This state is attracted, and I'm going to sum up here real quick, Chair. This is an attractive state to do health care in because we have the provider tax. Everybody goes, oh God, the provider tax, don't talk about that. We give more per our Medicaid patients than any other state because of that provider tax. We've come up with a real good solution because like in Wisconsin, and I'll say it clearly, you get 40, maybe 30 cents on the dollar as a provider. In Minnesota, that goes up to almost 50, 60 cents, which is a much better return. That's why the for-profits are coming here, because many of these places depend on the Medicaid dollar and going to depend more on it. And so we have to be careful because we are a state that you want to do health care in. Regardless what the rumors are and all these articles we hear, this is the state we want to do health care in. Thank you, Representative Bierman, for bringing this.
Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just kind of looking at some of the testimony that was provided, one of the concerns was the threshold for mergers that would have annual revenue averaging of $10 million. There was some concern about that, and I'm wondering if the author is set on that dollar amount given the public testimony, or where you came up with $10 million, or if that should be relooked at, because I think that's a concern. And then my other question to Mr. Lehman's testimony with Prairie Care, does this bill has a clawback, I believe, of 5 years? Would that affect that merger? And maybe that's something that should be looked at in the bill. So both the $10 million limit and then the 5-year clawback, if there's some
Representative Bierman.
negotiation that should be put on with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Koznick. Two excellent questions. The first one, the $10 million. We have been in conversations with many of the healthcare entities, and we are looking at a larger number right there. So it will move. We're still talking about what that number should or could be. But it's a very good point and one that is being addressed presently. The second one in regard...
Just on that point then, was that just kind of a starting point then?
Do not have the floor. Please go on with your answer.
Well, I was going to go into the second one, but...
No, go ahead.
Yes, so it was, 10 million was a starting point, and we did look at other states who have had similar numbers, but we're moving it in Minnesota. Second question was in regards to the clawback. So I think the Assistant Attorney General spoke to that already, just that the clawback would be around specific things like if the entity had sort of created a monopoly in a space over a period of years, that would be something that they would look at and consider. Diversion of funds, that's pretty obvious. And then contrary to public interest. So that's a little more broad. But I think included in that is what would any unwinding entail, and would that be in the public interest? So I think when you get to a point in this marketplace that unwinding something of that nature would be far more difficult and could be even detrimental, even if they had achieved something.
We have 3 more questions that I'm going to go to, so I'm going to need you to be very concise in your answers.
Thank you.
Representative
I
Bonner?
appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. Frankly, part of this bill has to do with an existential question of where we want to be as Minnesotans. Part of the reason we are a beacon for healthcare in the entire country is because of some of our nonprofit systems. So there's a fundamental question around nonprofit versus profit, and frankly, about whether or not we profit from human suffering, which I think is a little interesting. The other part of this bill deals with reduction in services. We've already seen this in greater Minnesota, in particular with reproductive health care and pregnancy services, places who no longer have the ability to take care of mothers who are having babies and puts them at greater risk. I think those are real problems. And I just will kind of finish with this. You know, as legislators, it is our duty as legislators to put Minnesotans first. We are elected by people. We are here to represent people, not businesses. And while that may sound harsh, and we certainly appreciate the great things that businesses do in terms of providing services and employment, first and foremost, we are legislators, and it is our duty to represent the interests of Minnesotans first. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't hear a question there. Lead Nash.
Madam Chair, before we do that, we have 3 minutes left, and this we have way more questions than that. Can we lay this over and bring it back on Thursday? Because in order to be fair to the jurisdiction,
We are not going to do that.
I'm going to make a motion to lay it on the table.
All right, there's a motion to lay it on the table.
And
This
request
is
a roll call.
Non-debatable. Please take the roll.
Chair Klevorn.
No.
Chair Klevorn, no. Vice Chair Hewitt.
No.
Vice Chair Hewitt, no. Representative Nash.
Aye.
Representative Nash, aye. Representative Bonner.
No.
Representative Bonner, no. Representative Berg.
No.
Representative Berg, no. Representative Freiberg.
No.
Representative Freiberg, no. Representative Hansen.
No.
Representative Hansen, no. Representative Harder. Aye. Representative Harder, aye. Representative Herr.
No.
Representative Herr, no. Representative Joy.
Aye.
Representative Joy, aye. Representative Koznick.
Aye.
Representative Koznick, aye. Representative Nadeau.
Aye.
Representative Nadeau, aye. With Jerry Newton excused, the ayes are 5, the ayes are 7.
With 5 ayes, 7 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the bill is not laid on the
Well,
table.
Madam Chair, I believe I still have the floor for
You
a
do?
question. I guess I'm going to have to be extremely brief. Representative Bierman, you and I talked briefly beforehand. This deeply impacts the hospital that's located here in my district in Waconia. The $10 million threshold is incredibly low and deeply impacts their ability to do service. Their merger with Arlington and the LeSueur hospitals would virtually be impossible with this now. I had a question for the Assistant AG, if we can squeeze that in super fast.
Ms. Conti, if you'll come to the table, please.
And I'll ask the question as she's coming. You talked about the ability for the AG's office to provide oversight, and certainly you're looking into the Fairview-Sanford merger, but I also know that there are some, the Essentia in Duluth is merging with a Michigan company. Can you detail, or I guess not detail, but overview quickly the amount of scrutiny that you've offered into that merger as well?
Ms. Conti.
Madam Chair and Representative Nash, I can't give you a detailed answer on that because I am not part of any investigation on it. Also, the office is bound to not discuss open investigations. I can tell you that under existing state law, we review these kind of things for antitrust and charitable law issues.
Madam Chair,
Lead Nash.
The bill is deeply troubling for myself, sounds like some other members in the committee as well. This is something that should stay in committee. You've already voted that down. I'm going to ask for a roll call out of committee, and I'm just going to say this. I'm not trying to play gotcha games here. We have questions, and you're not allowing for that. That is something that's fundamentally offensive for our side, is that we want to ask questions because we have to make decisions based on what we hear in committee. We don't have the time. I'm simply asking to lay it over and bring it back on Thursday, because if we don't, we can make all the re-referrals on the floor and we can just drag this out ad infinitum with procedural motions. We're asking for time to ask questions.
Thank you, Lead Nash. In the beginning of this year, we made an agreement, you and I, that we would always take public testimony first before member discussion. That's what we did today. We were able to allow people who were not on the list to testify. We did not limit their time to testify, and with that, a roll call has been requested. If you'd please take the roll.
Chair.
Excuse me. I'll renew my motion that House File 402 be re-referred to the Health, Finance, and Policy Committee. Thank you. Health Committee.
Chair Klevorn.
Aye.
Chair Klevorn, aye. Vice Chair Hewitt.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hewitt, aye. Representative Nash.
No.
Representative Nash, no. Representative Bonner.
Aye.
Representative Bonner, aye. Representative Berg.
Aye.
Representative Berg, aye. Representative Freiberg.
Yes.
Representative Freiberg, aye. Representative Hansen.
Aye.
Representative Hansen, aye. Representative Harder. No. Representative Harder, no. Representative Herr.
Aye.
Representative Herr, aye. Representative Joy.
No.
Representative Joy, no. Representative Koznick.
No.
Representative Koznick, no. Representative Nadeau.
No.
Representative Nadeau, no. Representative Newton, excused. The ayes are 5, the nays
No.
are, the ayes are 7, the ayes are 7, the nays are 5, with 1 excused.
With 7 ayes, 5 nays, and 1 excused, the motion prevails and House File 402 is re-referred to the Health Committee. Thank you very much. Members, we'll meet again on Thursday, and with that, we are adjourned.